Welcome to Something to Talk About. It is the Christmas season. As we're winding down, counting the days toward the big day of Christmas, we all sort of start to look inward on the dynamics of celebrating a really emotional, maybe sensitive time for people. It is the Christmas season, and we take a look at how we interact with each other. And we're going to be talking today with a therapist from Healing Hearts Crisis Center. Marissa Uggen is with us on Something to Talk About, hoping that you're going to have a Merry Christmas season. That's what's ahead. Here we are at King's Restaurant. Of course, we got our old favorites. We got the Chessa platter. We got fruit to justify why we're eating the Chessa platter. We got our cups of hot tea, and we've got a good friend of ours, Marissa Uggen. Hi, how are you?
So happy to be here.
Merry Christmas. You look. I was just saying. I was looking in the monitor. She looks. You really look good.
It's the TV. Poinsettias.
Yeah. Well, it's your happy face too. Thank you for coming today. I told you earlier. I wanted to sort of pick your brain about Christmas feelings. I mean, I think of all times of the year, right? The Christmas season is our most sensitive.
Absolutely. It brings everything. It brings all kinds of emotions. You know, for most people, it's a happy time. There's a lot to celebrate, but there's also so much stress. You know, there's all the shopping, all the expectations, and then all the family stuff. Mm-hmm. So on Guam especially, we're always pulled in a billion different places, right? We're always have to do this and that and this and that, and then we're still expected to have time to shop and find time for ourselves and be happy, but sometimes it's exhausting. Yeah. That's just the reality.
Yeah, that's kind of the dynamic of the season. If you find yourself kind of sitting around, it's kind of like you're waiting for a big party to happen and you're doing nothing to prepare for it.
Right.
It kind of feels like you're not living up to whatever standard, right? Mm-hmm. But are we not also sort of victims of our own attitude toward it, though?
Absolutely. I think we build everything up, and you know, there's a lot of talk lately about how Christmas season it seems to start earlier and earlier and earlier. So now, like, you know, just to call it out, you go to places like Home Depot or Kmart or any place like that, and even like before Halloween, they're starting all of this. So the buildup is there, and it's expected that everything is going to be so grand.
Yeah.
And so, of course, whenever you have something with such high expectations, there's always going to be a letdown. I think it's inevitable.
Oh, yeah. After the Christmas season is over and you go back to work, after that one day that we have off on Monday, Tuesday is going to be a letdown for a lot of people.
Right, and that's the thing. It all leads up to one day, but, you know, depending on your culture and stuff like that, no, the Christmas season goes on, then you have the 12 days of Christmas, you end it with Three Kings.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, so for some, they like to take it all the way like that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the family dynamic. I think it's kind of interesting when we live in a culture like ours. We're surrounded by so many other cultures.
Yeah.
And so you're really there with the diversity. Do you feel that people have an obligation to meet some of the more stringent guidelines of everybody's
Yeah. So you have all the cultural stuff. You have the religious stuff. So you have all these expectations, and depending on, you know, it's kind of like that when in Rome. So depending on what obligation or what party you're going to, you're kind of expected to act a certain way.
Yeah.
This way or that way, depending on who you're with. And so we go through it, and it becomes almost schizophrenic. You know, we kind of lose ourselves in the season, I feel.
Yeah.
Because we're just so busy trying to go from one thing to the next and still somehow balance our core family. And sometimes I think on Guam, it's that unit that gets the most neglected in the season because we're just so busy that we don't actually make time for our own families, you know, our own kids, our own parents, our own grandparents, if we're lucky enough to still have them.
Yeah.
You know.
And then in just families, in that social unit, you have members of different cultures also. There's diversity within that core unit as well. So how about the integration of all of that into what you grew up with?
Right.
There's a little bit of stress when you're, in our family, for example, we've got somebody, who's Caucasian, we have another person who's Filipino, we have another person who's black. So there's trying to make everybody feel like they're
like
at home.
there's something for them, or they're a part of it somehow.
Yeah, there's a lot of stress for the head of the household to figure that one out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But we are judged by the way we can handle these things. It sounds.
I think
me.
so, and I think as women, we're even harder on ourselves, because we're expected to do all this planning, this coordination, to have everything together. I just saw something on Facebook recently, some kind of post about this mom that loses her, whatever, and everybody thinks she has it together, and then she goes off on this rant, and I found it hilarious because we totally relate to that.
Oh, I saw that one last night. Yeah.
So sometimes I think that we need to take the time to just step back, and even if it's only for 5 or 10 minutes in a day, you need to have that time to yourself to kind of regroup. They say you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're so stressed out and so exhausted, you're not going to enjoy it, then your kids are not going to enjoy it, then you're going to be upset at them. Yeah. Then you're going to be short-tempered, and it's just this cycle.
Well, I think this is also for people who are dealing with somebody who is the person who handles everything, who is usually the leader of the pack and the person, who plans all of the parties, to cut them a little slack as well, because we can be very hard on people who we feel are not rising to the level that they may have in years past.
And the problem is that we have that expectation, but we never say anything to them. We never say, hey, I would appreciate it if you did this. No, we just expect that, so-and-so should know I'm doing this and this and this and this, so they should step up. How are they supposed to know that? I mean, let's just be real.
So you're saying that people should confront or approach or somehow
I think
or
communicate. I like the word communicate because I think that in our Guam families, there are a lot of expectations, and there's usually that leader, and that person is expected to do things, and then other people don't necessarily step up, maybe because, and there's a lot of reasons, maybe because they think that the person's got it all, figured out, they don't need help, or they don't know how to help, or if they've asked in a certain way, we're infamous for going around about it, hinting.
We're passive aggressive.
So
aren't
passive aggressive.
That's like our biggest fault, I think. We're so nice, but we're so mean inside.
Right, absolutely. So, Patty should know. I dropped a billion hints that I could help in this way or not. She obviously doesn't want my help.
Yeah.
And then you're the one who's stressed out because, oh my gosh, Marissa's not even offering to do anything.
Yeah.
And then when we all get together, then you wonder why somebody's giving attitude, and it's like, okay, can we just talk about it?
Yeah.
There's a billion WhatsApp groups, sometimes that's helpful, sometimes that's harmful.
Yeah. Because
you miss one message and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't scroll up 3 days ago.
Yeah. And so, the communication is absolutely huge. Like face-to-face personal communication is the best way to go. So that's good advice. Cuts a person, maybe you can cut somebody some slack, and maybe you, if you're feeling very responsible, that you could try to do as much as you can to communicate and keep those lines open. But really, I mean, if you've been doing this for a long time in your family, your traditions have largely remained the same. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You might have the same old feelings that you had, like, oh God, they never even gave me my Tupperware back from the last time.
That's always a sensitive topic.
Even if it's the Cool Whip one, people
because your name is on it, right?
Yeah, no, it's your possession. But I think that you're actually explaining what a lot of people feel in their families. But like I said, the traditions have been the same, so it's nothing. You're not reinventing the wheel for this for the season. You're just trying to do
continue
what you have to
it
do.
on, not maintain that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to take a break in a few minutes here, but I wanted to approach a couple of other subjects in that kids are watching all of this as well. And I know that you work a lot with children. They're little sponges that pick up on all of these innuendos, don't they? Are they smarter than we think they are in that way?
They are so much smarter than we think they are. I truly think that kids nowadays are smarter than we were when we were kids.
Yeah.
I just had that conversation with my mother yesterday because I think that the children of this generation, I have a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old, and an 11-month-old. And my 2 older girls, understand this whole idea of competing priorities in a way that I never had to as a child.
What's competing priorities?
Just that they have the Christmas program, and they also have this dance thing, and they also have family obligations, and they are learning how to balance this, and they're learning how to prioritize, and that's not something I ever had to deal with.
Yeah.
I think lives are just more complicated.
So, I mean, but you as a mother, how do you take that stress off of them?
That's where the honesty comes in. You know, just an honest story is that today and tomorrow is the St. Anthony Christmas concert. Okay, my 9-year-old committed to this winter intensive dance program, right? And she wanted it as a Christmas gift. It's extra from her regular dance. And I said, okay. When we figured everything out and the schedules had changed, it ended up being this week. It's like, oh my gosh, it's not Christmas break. So what are you gonna do? We paid all this money and all this. So I told her, I said, honestly, I said, it may not be the correct thing to do, but you're gonna miss one day of your Christmas concert, and then you're gonna miss one day of dance. And I'm gonna write to your teacher, and I'm gonna explain that this is what it is. And then I'm going to tell your dance people that you can't be here because you have this obligation. And just that kind of stuff. I never had to deal with that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but she's old enough, she's smart enough, she's mature enough to understand it, and they start learning how to have those kinds of life skills earlier on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we also charge our kids with making some of these decisions. I mean, you know what? My mother just used to tell me what my schedule was, right? But now we give them the opportunity.
Yeah, we ask them, and so what do you think? What do you want to do?
So we've engaged them in the decision making, which makes them accountable in the end. Is that a good thing?
I really struggle with that because I think definitely it's a good thing because our children are learning responsibility, but there's also a big burden that comes with that I don't always think is fair for the little ones, and it starts like even in kinder.
Yeah, you got to really watch them. The schedules, these kids are busier than I am, I tell you. Listen, when we get back, there is a downside of all of this. Well, I promise we'll end on a happy note, but this is also the season where a lot of people are really upset and sensitive. Nerve endings are out there just flopping. We wanted to find out how much more you guys have to deal with kids that are coming in situations of family violence or domestic abuse and crimes against kids when they should really be happy and joyful at this time of year. That's what we're going to talk about on Something to Talk About when we get back. We'll be right back. Well, welcome to Something to Talk About with Marissa Uggan from Healing Hearts Crisis Center. She's a therapist, so we wanted to pull her in and talk to her about the less than jolly things that happen during the season. And that's the stark reality. 'Tis the season to be jolly, but it is a very tough time for people psychologically. And they take it out on their family members. And you see this quite a bit.
Absolutely, because it's a time of higher stress. And people don't have that empathy for each other, so everybody is stressed out. So even though you may expect your partner to be more accommodating of you, you're not being more accommodating of them by understanding what they're going through as well. So everybody has this expectation that somebody's going to cut me some slack, even though I'm not cutting them some slack. And it really can foster
I was just talking to Paula Perez from Ali's Shelter, and I just asked her about that. Is this the season where you start to see more cases come through? She said, we're at capacity now.
Yep.
We're at capacity. We're sheltering everybody, and you can't turn them away.
Right.
Yeah. But the Healing Hearts Crisis Center is less about as intake like that, though. You don't intake them like that.
No. We deal with victims of sexual assault and abuse, all ages. But we also see that increase during the holiday season. And a lot of that.
You see an increase in sexual abuse?
Yes.
During the holiday season?
A lot of times it's because there's more access to the children. Just completely honestly, most of the perpetrators are family members or acquaintances of our victims. So these children know the person who's abusing them. And so when you have all of these gatherings and you have all these opportunities, they're opportunities.
You mean that there are people who are pretty much walking time bombs in your own family, waiting for kids to have an extended period off, like summer or Christmas vacation?
Summer or Christmas vacation. just more family parties, more opportunities for more kids to be around them, and it's easier to sneak off with one kid or take one kid to a bedroom when there's a lot of kids there rather than just the 2 or 3 who are usually there on the weekend.
So, do families recognize that there's that predatory behavior around them, or does it come as a complete shock?
A lot of times it comes as a complete shock, but what we try to educate people is to just be more in tune with your children. So kids, you said it earlier, they're so smart. They have such good instincts. On Guam, I think, especially in the Chamorro culture, we have these expectations. We make our kids mangingi everybody, and it's disrespectful if they don't. But if you notice that your child doesn't want to go to somebody, there might be a reason for that. Exactly.
Yeah. I did that blanket thing when I got here. When I first moved to Guam, it was like that because my kids were raised as well in the Hawaiian culture, where there's the same display of affection toward elders or family members. My rule of thumb has been always, if I say, here's Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, you don't have to kiss them. And it's fine with me if it's a sign of disrespect that you don't kiss them. That, if you shake their hand, that's a sign of respect. You know what I mean? I had to kind of break this mold because I couldn't have my daughter kissing everybody, and I couldn't have all these creepy old guys kissing her too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And my children are raised the same way. I mean, I think I because of the work that I do, I'm very honest with them. I'm very open with them, but they're very loving girls. So they'll walk around a party and kiss everybody, and I'm just kind of like,
please. Yeah. Is it hard to address these sort of cultural norms that we have and to try to break those norms?
It's harder to address with the parents than it is with the children. So we do a lot of work in the schools, especially the elementary schools. So these kids know, and they know their red flag, green flag touches. It's harder to talk to parents and teachers and tell them, you know what, listen to your children. And know if there's something wrong. And, take that cue from them. And don't get mad at them. Don't get mad that they're being disrespectful. Take a moment, 30 seconds, a minute, pull them aside and ask them, what's wrong? How come you don't want to go to Uncle So-and-so?
Yeah. And they're likely to tell you
They're likely to probably not tell you the truth at that moment, but be pretty adamant that I just don't want to.
Yeah. And take that.
And then you take that, and then you can deal with it later. You don't have to break the party. A lot of parents are like, well, it's going to ruin the whole celebration. You don't have to. At that point, you just keep that child closer to you during that party, and you can address it later.
What about those cases? Because in the news we read a lot in these magistrates' reports, where their first line of defense is the mother who ignores the signs, even the direct contact that the child is warning the parent.
Or the mother knows about it and still does nothing about it.
I've seen a case like that, and what was more awkward is that it was her boyfriend.
Right. And that's the number one perpetrator is mom's boyfriend.
Yeah, it seems like I see a lot of those cases. It's the mom's boyfriend, and the mom is reluctant to do anything about it because it's her boyfriend, but she's clearly making one of these two the priority.
Right, and it's really difficult. There's so many complex dynamics there because he may be the one who's providing all of the support to the family.
Yeah.
She may want, we try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. So in the best case scenario, she may be trying to protect her children and just failing at it. Otherwise, in other situations, she is blatantly, not being protective of them. And that's where CPS really comes in, and they do an excellent job at that, assessing the situation in home. We've had several cases in which the mother ends up arrested because she's not able to protect her child.
Yeah, we've seen those cases, that's the hardest one to watch because that the kid feels like they're in a safe environment when they really aren't. What is the long-standing issues from something like that? Do they tend to kind of get over it when it's their parents, or does it really just depend on the kind of therapy that they get?
Yeah, we always recommend therapy because a lot of times the children, they love their mom. So even though on a cognitive level they understand that their mother did something wrong, that doesn't change the way they feel about them, and we don't want that.
Yeah.
We want them to love their mothers, but we want the mothers to also get help. So client services at the court, for example, does a really good job at that. So if we're working with the child, they can be working with the mom, teaching her how to protect her children and kind of kind of a behavioral rehab. And at the same time, we're working with the child on how to deal with all the stress and how to have better coping mechanisms and all of those kinds of things. But the relationship between the child and the mother doesn't have to be
contentious.
right.
And that's ultimately what everybody wants. I mean, you want to be able to provide some therapy for the parents, because ultimately it would seem to me that that's not what the mother wants either.
Right.
Yeah.
Parenting skills is the number one.
Yeah.
And I think all the agencies involved in the work that we do, we all have the same goal, is to keep the family together.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to split families and take children away from their parents.
Yeah,
we
that's
want to
it.
work within the system so that everybody has the skills that they need to do better.
Yeah. Well, I would assume that there has to be an effort in this town, this community as well, to find more child-conducive type activities during the holiday. It's easy to go out to the parties where there are a lot of adults, and it's usually adult-centric. If the parents are the ones who are deciding what social events to go to, that you got to throw in every once in a while that time, the time where the kids are free to be in an environment they know is safe. They can have their full-on, fun time without the stresses of being lugged around by shopping and
Right.
in and out of the car seat.
Right,
and
we think that they
restaurants
love
and-
shopping. They
Yeah,
don't love it that much.
They hate it, honestly. Riley hates shopping, but kid-centric activities.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there are more and more, and then families can do stuff too. Taking them around to the lights and
Yeah.
stuff. If there's an availability for them to kind of run around. They don't want to go somewhere where they have to put their hands behind their back and just look. They want to be able to see and be kids. And I think making sure you do that in the holiday season and finding those opportunities is great.
How do you replace the when a kid has, when you're not buying everything that's on a kid's wish list? How does a parent go about fulfilling some of these wishes and dreams without having to spend hundreds of dollars on a wish list?
Especially with multiple children, one thing that can be priceless is actually taking time out for each child individually to do something. It's so much easier said than done, but if the effort is made and you can even take one kid out to a movie, just them, the movie that they want to watch, or the other kid wants to go to Chuck E. Cheese, the other kid wants to go to Playport, or whatever it is, or even to the beach. It doesn't have to be something that costs a lot of money, but one-on-one time with your children can be...
Will save you a lot of money.
It'll save you tons of money, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to spend $50.
Yeah, and on the other side of that, there are families who have pretty good resources and use Christmas, to fill those wish lists, and that translates into their kind of love for them.
Right,
And I don't
absolutely.
knock that at all. I mean, if you
you
have
got
all the
it,
money in the
then
world
do
and
it.
you could do it,
Yep.
I would too. But lest we forget that sometimes kids don't always want it to be that extravagant. That's pretty simple.
Especially
enough.
when you're so busy, they just want time with you.
They just want time. Time. That's what we need. Christmas time is what we're all about. I want to thank you so much. You've given a lot of good advice.
I'm so happy to be here.
And you look great. She just absolutely looks great on camera anyway. I appreciate your time as well. Merry Christmas to all. This is something to talk about.